Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another Noodle film review. Today we're looking at a British art house film called Ennie's Men. Now this is a recent film. I believe it came out, I don't know, about a year or so ago. It's by the same director of the film Bait, which I reviewed on my channel not so long ago. And this is where that was more of a sort of town regeneration change sort of like story. This is a sort of art house horror film, and it's really based upon Annie, who's this woman who lives. I think she's played by Mary Woodvine, and she lives on this island off Cornwall. Um, it's not really explained what she's doing because she's doing the same thing every day. I don't know if she's some sort of scientist or a researcher or biologist, but she's taking the temperature of the ground on this little island where there's like this small kind of like on this desolate island. It's like a little orchid plant is sort of grown, um, which is sort of white with yellow and red in it, and she is there kind of like seeing if there's been any change on this flower. Now, to me, the island's got a history. It's almost like it's like a haunted island almost, when the sense of like there's some old mines down below in the actual island, and she also checks the water level of the island. So she's obviously some sort of scientist because she's checking the temperature of the and the level of the water. So she keeps dropping rocks down this sort of mine shaft, probably, and she probably times it to see if there's any change in when she can hear it hit the water. And she does this on a daily kind of sort of habit, and she's living on this island on her own in this old sort of like island cottage, which seems to be like the only sort of building on the actual island. There is some kind of buildings sort of like that are still there, like, but they're sort of like ruins of buildings, like an old church and like almost like an old fort. There is that kind of sort of buildings on the island, but hers seems to be the only house, and she's sort of living there, and she's got no electric. She's got like a generator which she relies on petrol, and she's sort of like relies on this for her only fuel source. So in a way, it's quite a really cool way to live, back to minimalistic. So she sort of like has a generator on when she's there to make her tea and listen to the wireless, and she's got like an old sort of fashioned CB radio to keep in communication with the shore. Anyway, she and at night time she's by candlelight and by firelight in the fireplace. So and she's seems quite content with no television, nothing like that, no computers, no mobile phones. She's just there with nature, if you like. And she's watching, observing nature as we are. Because as the film progresses, we tend to see the evolution of this sort of like little island, if you like, how it sort of changes from like little bit from season to season, how it's very bright and summery, and in other days it's quite drab and looks very dull with lots of sort of like lichen and weeds and sort of mosses growing all over the place. So we get to see this. Um, and she sort of like sees all these visuals. Now, when I mean that, she's sort of like seeing things, like she sees this girl that's supposedly living there. I won't go into depth what that is, but you need to watch that and find out. And she sees like a man now and again. Now, the man, I believe, is her supply man, because she gets supplies um, from the mainland, like petrol, tea, powdered milk, and and her food. I expect potatoes and things like this. She gets her supplies. Anyway, she gets a radio call saying that her supplies are coming, and they don't seem to appear. And she seems to be waiting and waiting and waiting. And as she's waiting, she's seeing more and more visions. And some strange sort of things are happening on this island, as well as like the vision of this girl. We see visions of like groups of children, almost like a paganistic sort of overtone to this film. We see like these children sort of like carrying these branches and singing songs outside the house that she's living in, and we see people in the house from like years ago, and she sees visions of herself almost, which is really strange. And there's like this huge sort of like rock that's stuck right outside her house. It's like a monument. It's like this sort of shape, and it seems to change with the weather. And then one day it's even gone at one point, and it's really really strange. So all these bizarre things are happening, and the flowers that she's monitoring start to grow lichen, and she starts to grow lichen on her across her stomach. Now across her stomach she's got a wound, like a sewn up wound that's been there for years, and she starts to grow lichen along this wound. So she's sort of really connecting with this island, almost like coming a part of it. And she sort of sees all these strange visions of the miners that used to live there down below, and it's very very eerie and quite spooky. And later in the film, the guy that does her supplies turns up, and he drops off some more supplies, and she has a vision. Sorry guys, it's late and keep yawning. She has this vision of she sees his body floating in the water. And then we sort of near the end of the film, when he's dropped the supplies off and going, we see like a helicopter arrive, and we see his body being lifted out in a boat out of the water and taken away. So she did say to him, "You should stay," but he got to go. But when he leaves the house, we see him sort of screaming. So I think something's happened to him, and I really think there's something really haunted about this sort of island. From people that used to live there years and years ago, and they still inherit there, but by spirit. And anyone that lives on the island or comes to the island kind of gets infected by it a little bit, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. It's a very strange kind of horror film. It's a very art house horror, where the film is mostly about the cinematography and the sounds and the soundtrack, because there's minimal script, like that German witch film that I saw and that I reviewed on my channel. What was that called again? Is it something like Hagenuzi, something like that? But that was minimum script. This is the same. There's hardly no script in it, because she's there on her own, and she's doing the same daily routines throughout the day, and we see that, and nothing really happens apart from these slight little changes in the island and sort of like the plants, and then strange things sort of happen, and she has these visions or stuff, and she starts doing things to herself. She's cut her hand on glass with the electric stove. She puts her hand on it, and it's all these kind of strange sort of things that it's almost like the island's telling her to do it. And there's some really weird sort of connections in there. Like she wears this red red raincoat, and she finds a yellow raincoat which belongs to the supply man. He wears a yellow raincoat, and the flowers have got red and yellow in it. So these little connections to this island, because the rest of the island's all green and sort of like and brown, and with a really sort of harsh sea. and the wildlife of the sort of birds that we got living around there, the islands, and insects and things like that. We get to see all of that, which is really nice, and it's really well shot. So that's kind of like the basis of what the story is. I mean, it's a very difficult film to give you a synopsis because there isn't one. It's what you take from it, I think, and it's one of those films that I think requires multiple viewings to take something different from the next time you watch it. So, what do I think of Ennie's Men? I thought it was amazing. I thought it was absolutely amazing film. Really, really cool. But I must warn you, it's not everyone's cup of tea. If you're looking, it is a horror film. It's a British horror film, but it's very typical British as well because it's very arty. Um, the pluses of the film, the photography is phenomenal. Shot in 13mm, so again you've got like the borders on the either side, and it's shot like a really old film with like broken grain, bit like Bait. If you saw my Bait film review, it's like it's all kind of like scratches on the film, noise on the film, sort of like you get a red screen go across sometimes, and it's shot like to make it look like it's an old sort of cine camera film, which gives it that sort of really eerie atmosphere, I think. But it still looks beautiful, and it still looks absolutely stunning. And the sort of like the colours of the red coat, the flowers, and the yellow coat just stand out. They just pop out of the screen. The sound is incredible. It's an amazing soundtrack, and it goes so quiet in some places, just so you can hear the rustling of the grass, or her footsteps on the grass, or her socks on the carpet. It's all really done so well, and it just looks absolutely incredible and amazing. Um, it's played really well. She plays a good part. She's very convincing as sort of like this woman that is living on her own, isolated, and starts getting that feeling of isolation, and doesn't really telling everyone she likes it, but she doesn't really, because she's starting to see things and imagine things, and it seems to be taking over her, and the island seems to be making her a part of the island, and it's kind of really um, eerie like that, like the eeriness of the Wicker Man. It's got that sort of, or the Witch, or that Hagazusa, the German film, that sort of eeriness. It's got that in bucket loads in this film. Like I said, it's not an all-out horror, so it's not a horror film where you're going to see loads of blood, guts, gore, killings. It's the horror is the isolation, a bit like Lighthouse. It's the isolation of that, and seeing sort of little things that change in the island affects her life, and affects her in a big way. That's where the horror comes from. The negatives, a lot of people, it will not appeal to a lot of people, this film, because it's a very art house film. It's very arty, and it's like the photography is really long still shots on a certain subject for a long time, and it'll have really strange sort of like bizarre photography where it will really close up on like a piece of lichen, or her face just there, and it's very sort of like raw kind of photography, but I really liked that. I thought it was absolutely incredible and makes the film, but a lot of people won't like it, and a lot of people won't like it because they'll be thinking, oh, something happened, please, because they're not watching. You're not watching. Things are happening, and you've got to look at the whole picture and see things that are changing. The little routine things that she does every day, little things change every day, and you need to see those, and you can see how it sort of changes her. That's what I get from it, but a lot of people won't get that. So it's not for everyone. So for the general public, I'd probably give this a 5 or 6 out of 10. But for me, I'm giving this an amazing watch and giving it a 9 out of 10. It doesn't quite reach the 10 out of 10 of The Lighthouse or The Witch, but it's up there. It's very, very close. It's a very, very, very intelligent horror film, and very artistically filmed. absolutely amazing. And His Men, 9 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you thought of it. It really isn't most people's cup of tea. You've got to have a horror brain that can accept horror in many ways. If you just look at horror as monsters, gore, slasher, then this is not going to be for you. But if you like films that are very sort of haunting in a way, but not haunting as like you see the ghosts, but haunting in the sense of like sends shivers down you, sort of thing, putting yourself in their situation. If you can do that, I suppose like The Wicker Man, because you have to do that with that film. You have to put yourself in that kind of situation. And that's the same with this. That's where the true horror comes from it. If you can do that, then you'll love it. Excellent film. Amazing. So there we are, guys. That's my review, and His Men. Please check out some horror channels for me. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Designs, Pizzawell. I'm the Ice Lord. Sarah of Horror, Cat Watches Horror Movies, Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House, and a massive shout out to the lad Lemon Lord. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I hope to see you all soon.